Mr. President, allow me at the outset to thank the UK, France, Denmark, Greece, and Slovenia, as well as Algeria and Guyana for calling for this meeting regarding the horrific humanitarian situation in Gaza, and to thank you, Mr. President, for convening it in a timely manner. Allow me also to thank Under-Secretary General Tom Fletcher for his distressing briefing and for his relentless appeals for humanity in the face of persistent horrors, and for his efforts together with the UN system as a whole at a time of grave crisis. Allow me further to thank Director Angelica Giacomo of FAO for the briefing on the latest IPC report, which stressed that, and I quote, "goods indispensable for people's survival are either depleted or expected to run out in the coming weeks. The entire population is facing high levels of acute food insecurity," end of quotation. And starvation is the fate imminently faced by at least 500,000 people. Mr. President, 93% of Gaza's children, 930,000 children, are at critical risk of famine. Not because there is no food. Food is there, a few meters away, rotting instead of reaching those who desperately need it. But because Israel has been openly and brazenly blocking humanitarian aid for over 2 months now, this is engineered starvation. It is the most inhumane form of torture and killing. 2.1 million people are at risk of famine, with 500,000 faced with a catastrophic situation of hunger and starvation, illness, and death. If the situation persists, nearly 71,000 children under the age of 5 are expected to be acutely malnourished. Israel is weaponizing aid, unleashing famine, which impact is felt most by the smallest children. If ever more proof was needed for the intention to destroy the Palestinian people in Gaza, this manufactured famine is the ultimate proof. Mr. President, Netanyahu was clear yet again about the goals of this war against our people. He said before the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee of the Israeli Knesset on Sunday, and I quote, "We are destroying more and more homes. They have nowhere to return to. The only inevitable outcome will be the wish of Gazans to immigrate outside of the Gaza Strip," end of quotation. He is confessing that it is the destruction and death that Israel is wantonly and deliberately spreading that will force Palestinians in Gaza to leave, and that it is indeed Israel's intent to forcibly remove them. Destructions of a people by death and displacement by endless atrocities. Mr. President, the Israeli plan for the so-called distribution of humanitarian aid continues pursuing these same illegal objectives by other means. That plan has been rejected by all UN agencies and all humanitarian organizations, as it is just a continuation of the weaponization of aid by driving desperate civilians and humanitarians into militarized zones to receive or distribute aid at the peril of their lives, by counting calories, by denying aid to many, often the most vulnerable, and by further subjugating the population and entrenching forcible displacement. Any relief scheme needs to adhere to the humanitarian principles of humanity, impartiality, independence, and neutrality. The only reason behind the horrific humanitarian situation is Israel's persistent denial and blocking of aid. That is the problem that must be addressed. Significant humanitarian stocks are available, ready to enter as soon as the blockade is lifted. This makes the situation even more unbearable, even more inhumane, even more revolting. Mr. President, we hope that following the release of Idan Alexander, through the efforts of the United States, Qatar, and Egypt, that we will see the mediators succeed in pushing forward an immediate ceasefire that leads to stopping the bloodshed, addressing the catastrophic humanitarian situation, releasing the hostages and detainees, and to the withdrawal of Israeli occupation forces and the securing of a permanent ceasefire. For now, Israel is continuing to bomb hospitals and shelters and is promising more death and destruction. This madness must be stopped. President Trump declared from Saudi Arabia today that the United States was continuing to work to end the war as quickly as possible. We hope that President Trump's visit to the region will allow to achieve such a ceasefire and to build a political horizon of freedom for the Palestinian people, security for all, and shared prosperity for our region. Let me also seize this opportunity to welcome President Trump's announcement on lifting the sanctions over Syria, and to reiterate our call for the full respect of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Syria and Lebanon, which together with ending the illegal Israeli occupation of Palestine can transform our region. We look forward to the convening of the international conference for the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution, co-chaired by Saudi Arabia and France in June. We hope it will mark a turning point from occupation to freedom, from death to life, from conflicts to shared peace and security. Mr. President, we have witnessed as aid has been completely denied for 10 weeks in breach of every tenet of international humanitarian law, of this Council's resolutions, of every call by the General Assembly, of the ICJ provisional measures orders. We have seen all supplies blocked from entering Gaza, even those indispensable to the very survival of the civilian population. We saw bakeries having to shut their doors, community kitchens closing down, warehouses standing empty, children going hungry. Children died of malnutrition in Gaza. According to the WHO, and I quote, "Without enough nutritious food, clean water, and access to health care, an entire generation will be permanently affected." End of quotation. Time is our enemy, especially as hunger eats away at our children, at our babies, at their mothers, entire families left without food and clean water and shelter, with bombs for only horizon and only supply, facing their demise as the genocide continues, crushing their bodies one way or another or the other. When faced with such an unbearable, inhumane situation, the international community cannot wait, nor resign, nor surrender. It has to act by any and all means necessary. You have tools available to you to act if you wish, if you decide to use them, collectively as a council or in your national capacity as countries, if you are truly serious about putting an end to this crime against the Palestinian civilian population, especially in the Gaza Strip. Let me remind you of the concluding words of USG Tom Fletcher today, and I quote, "And for those who will not survive, what we fear is coming in plain sight. It will be no consolation to know that future generations will hold us in this chamber to account, but they will. And if we have not seriously done all we could, we should fear that judgment." End of quotation. And we salute him for all the things that he said in his statement today. It's a challenge to this chamber, to the Security Council, and to each and every one of you in your national capacity, and for the rest of the world who is watching us and all the countries outside this chamber of the Security Council. We call on the states represented around this table, on the Security Council as a body, on the General Assembly, and on all states represented within these United Nations to consider as a matter of urgency all possible steps, barring none, to break this inhumane siege imposed over 2 million people and to end this violent forced famine. This cannot be left to the whims of an Israeli government obsessed with dispossessing and displacing and destroying our people. It is our collective obligation to find a way forward in the next few days if this situation persists, to save the millions of lives that hang in the balance. End the famine, end the inhumanity, end the genocide, end the occupation. Let the Palestinian people live in freedom and dignity. Let all peoples in our region live in peace. Thank you.